chosen one, pause for a moment, because this moment has come to remind you that a profound transformation is taking place within you, and what was quietly cultivated can no longer remain hidden. You did not create this moment, nor could you see everything being arranged behind days that appeared ordinary. But heaven witnessed every small change in your thinking, every time you paused before reacting, and every moment when you chose to preserve a pure heart, even though circumstances could have made you bitter. Something new is forming, not through loud signs or outward display, but through a maturity so deep that even you may not yet fully recognize it. You do not need to announce that you have changed or prove to anyone that you have become stronger, because your quiet choices have already spoken for you. What I planted within you is reaching maturity, and that light can no longer be concealed by old judgments or distorted images from the past. A recognition is taking place in your life, not through the passing praise of the world, but from the one who sees what no one else knows. I saw you when no one was watching, when you had to choose between retaliation and release, between wounding another person with your words and remaining silent to protect your peace. The world usually looks only at outcomes, but heaven sees the entire journey. I know you passed through seasons when you had to resist despair, feelings of unworthiness, and the temptation to return to what had already caused you pain. Yet one day, those battles stopped merely exhausting you and began creating a new person within you. What is being affirmed is not the number of times you fell, but the person you became, after every time you rose again. You are entering a stage in which you understand your dignity more clearly, know what should be preserved, what must be released, and what no longer belongs on the road ahead. If these words touch a place deep within your heart, understand that it is not accidental. I am helping you look again at pieces that once appeared disconnected, so that you can recognize the meaning each lesson carried within your journey. Being misunderstood taught you not to live dependent upon the approval of others. Being abandoned taught you not to place your entire sense of worth into another person's hands. Seasons of solitude helped you hear your inner wisdom more clearly. Therefore, remain in this place of listening. What is being revealed is not intended to make you prideful, but to help you recognize a precious strength. The ability not to allow circumstances to determine who you are. Everything around you is beginning to change because your inward posture has changed. When you are no longer easily provoked, manipulation loses its power. When you no longer seek permission to live truthfully, aligned opportunities begin finding you. You must understand that what is happening is not a passing emotion, but a genuine transformation. Some changes occur so quietly that they alter the direction of an entire life without making a sound. You may still awaken in familiar surroundings, perform familiar work, and meet familiar people, but the way you are present is no longer the same. Things that once caused you to panic now cause you to pause and observe. Words that once kept you awake at night no longer possess enough power to define you. There are unseen witnesses to your growth, not searching for faults, but beholding the process through which you are being completed. I look upon you to understand, support, and acknowledge every step you took during the times when no one knew how hard you were trying. While you believed you were merely passing through ordinary days, heaven was witnessing a story of self-command, compassion, and endurance. Every response you make to pain reveals the person you are becoming. There were times when you could have used sharp words to wound others as they had wounded you, but you chose to step back. Decisions were made in silence, praised by no one and seen by no one, yet those decisions changed your inward direction. Bitterness sometimes stood very close, inviting you to take hold of it as a weapon, but you refused. You may have cried, become exhausted, and at times wanted to surrender. Yet you still did not allow pain to turn you into someone who causes pain. Those moments did not disappear. They are evidence that your heart preserved its light even while passing through darkness. This is what makes your story different. Many people become trapped in familiar cycles. When hurt, they attempt to make others suffer what they suffered. When betrayed, they close their hearts and call coldness strength. When insulted, they gradually become a reflection of the very person who wounded them. The cycle causes pain to continue spreading from one person to another and from one relationship to the next. Darkness always hopes that you will react according to former patterns so that the chains will never be broken. It wants you to believe retaliation is justice, emotional closure is safety, and suspicion toward everyone is wisdom. But every time you choose healing instead of causing harm, and boundaries instead of resentment, you bring an old cycle closer to its end. I am not saying that you must accept wrongdoing or return to places that once exhausted you. Forgiveness does not mean reopening every door, and compassion does not mean abandoning discernment. The strength I affirm within you is your ability to preserve a tender heart while maintaining clear boundaries. You can say no without hatred, leave without retaliation, and protect your peace without diminishing anyone. Before, one statement could leave you in turmoil for days. Now you know how to pause and ask whether it deserves the peace it is costing you. Before, another person's silence could cause you to question your worth. Now you understand that their behavior reflects who they are and does not determine your dignity. The awakening you are entering does not mean knowing everything that will happen in advance. It means you are beginning to see clearly what once operated quietly within you. You understand why certain words could provoke you so easily, why you were once attracted to relationships that forced you continually to prove your value, and why you returned to places where you no longer belonged. This awareness does not come to shame you, but to liberate you. When you see the cycle, you can choose not to repeat it. When you understand the wound, you can heal it instead of allowing it to control you. When you recognize the power of calmness, you stop giving authority to every provocation. This is why everything around you is changing. You are no longer the person you once were, and old things can no longer affect you as easily as they did before. Therefore, continue protecting what is forming within you. Do not return to your former self, merely because others are unfamiliar with your growth. Some will call your boundaries cold because they once benefited from your lack of limits. Some will say you have changed because they can no longer control your reactions. You do not need to argue or explain yourself. Allow your peace, consistency, and way of living to become your answer. I affirm that you did not merely survive what happened. You were transformed through it. You are no longer led by pain, but have learned to transform experience into wisdom, loss into compassion, and silent battles into strength that can support others. Continue forward with humility, because genuine strength does not need to be displayed. I saw you during your weakest days, and now I see the stability born from those very days. What was once hidden will gradually be revealed through the way you carry yourself, through wise decisions, and through your ability to bring peace into places once filled with chaos. You do not need to declare that you have matured. The fact that what once provoked you no longer controls, you will prove it. You do not need to recount every victory. Your refusal to return to old cycles will speak for itself. Heaven recognizes the person you have become, and now it is time for you to recognize yourself. Stop seeing yourself only as someone who was wounded. You are someone who learned not to pass that wound forward. That choice changed your story, ended a cycle, and opened a new road filled with clarity, freedom, and peace. My beloved child, you have accomplished something rare. You broke the cycle of pain that attempted to turn you into the very thing that wounded you. There were times when you possessed every reason to become cold, closed, and distrustful of human goodness. You were treated unfairly, misunderstood. When your intentions were sincere, betrayed by people you trusted, and abandoned when you most needed a hand to hold. Had you chosen to respond with anger, many people might have said they understood. Had you used words to create wounds as deep as those you received, the world might have regarded it as a natural response. Had you held tightly to resentment and allowed it to harden your heart, you could have found countless reasons to justify yourself. Yet amid all those reasons, a pure place within you quietly chose another road. You refused to let the actions of others determine who you would become. And that choice changed the direction of your entire life. I know you were not immune to pain. You felt the full weight of words that wounded you, moments when you were overlooked, promises that were broken, and the coldness of people you believed would always remain. You recognized the injustice, saw the insincerity of certain motives, and understood what had been taken from you. There were nights when you asked whether kindness had been a mistake, whether forgiveness caused others to disrespect you, and whether you should become harder so that you would never be wounded again. But within the small distance between what others did to you and what could form inside you, a quiet transformation occurred. You did not deny your pain, but neither did you give it the authority to become your only teacher. You began learning from what you endured without turning those lessons into a wall separating you from everyone. You did not become bitter. You became wiser. You learned to observe actions rather than trust words alone, and to recognize consistency rather than being carried away by beautiful promises. You did not become hateful. You became more understanding. You recognized that many people wound others because they carry unhealed wounds of their own, but that understanding no longer causes you to tolerate every harmful behavior. You can recognize the reason while still establishing boundaries. You can forgive without returning to a place that repeatedly depleted you. You can desire goodness for someone without continuing to grant them access to the peaceful places you worked so hard to rebuild. This is the maturity I formed within you. Compassion accompanied by discernment, tenderness accompanied by strength, and love accompanied by the ability to protect what is sacred within yourself. You also did not close your entire life after experiencing loss. Instead of living only to avoid further pain, you began living with greater purpose. You understood the value of every moment and no longer wanted to waste it in endless arguments. You recognized that your energy needed protection and stopped giving it to every provocation. You began choosing relationship containing respect, work possessing meaning, and roads that helped you become a clearer, and more authentic version of yourself. You may not recognize how significant this transformation has been. It did not arrive loudly, cause people immediately to applaud, or produce instant outward results, yet it was the moment. Heaven saw someone who had been wounded and still refused to allow the wound to become their nature. What you did was not an easy human response. No classroom can fully teach someone how to preserve a gentle heart after betrayal. No simple formula can show you how to remain silent before provocation without secretly nurturing resentment. This maturity formed through the times you cried alone and still chose not to harm an innocent person. Through moments when you wanted retaliation but decided to lay down your anger, and through days when you restrained your words, even though you knew you could use the truth to cause pain. You refused to become a reflection of what had wounded you. You did not let another person's cruelty define your heart. Nor did you allow their dishonesty to destroy your integrity. There is a principle you must understand clearly. Everything planted into a life seeks a place where it can continue existing. Pain, jealousy, anger, and negative thoughts rarely disappear on their own unless they are recognized, healed, and transformed. Most people receive what wounded them, hold it inside, and then unintentionally pass it to someone else. A child who was continually diminished may grow up and use coldness to control those around them. Someone who was betrayed may enter a new relationship with suspicion and make an innocent person pay for the mistakes of the past. Someone who was never heard may become excessively loud, not because they are evil, but because they are still trying to compensate for years of being ignored. In this way, pain moves from one person to another, changing its appearance without losing its influence. But you chose not to become the next link in that chain. Instead of absorbing pain and allowing it to overflow onto people who did not cause it, you carried it into a private place and faced it. You cried instead of making others cry. You sought stillness instead of creating chaos. You stepped back to understand yourself rather than reacting immediately. There were times when you did not handle everything perfectly, moments when you spoke in anger or reacted from a wound, but you learned to return, accept responsibility, and make changes. I do not define you by one weak moment. I look at the direction toward which you continually attempt to return. Every time you choose healing instead of retaliation, the old cycle loses more of its power. Every time you lay down what does not belong to you, your future becomes lighter, my child. Do not underestimate this hidden work. Perhaps no one knows how fiercely you had to struggle with yourself, not to send an angry message, return to an argument, or reveal another person's story merely to protect your own image. But I know. I see the times when you choose silence. Not because you are weak, but because you do not want to plant more pain. I see you preserve a pure heart, even when you possess enough evidence to shame another person. I see you refusing to use secrets shared during a season of closeness as weapons after the relationship ended. Those choices carry more weight than you realize, because they reveal that you are no longer controlled by immediate reactions. You are learning to live from purpose rather than from pain. Yet I also want you to understand that breaking a cycle does not mean you must remain and endure everything. You do not need to prove your goodness by allowing others continually to violate your boundaries. Forgiveness does not mean restoring access to someone who has not changed. Understanding does not require you to accept manipulation, insults, or disrespect. You can leave without carrying hatred. You can close a door without wishing harm upon the person standing on the other side. You can speak clearly, seek support, and protect yourself while preserving a pure heart. I have not called you to become a place where others unload all their chaos. I am teaching you to become someone who does not continue spreading that chaos farther. From now on, when the past tries to draw you back through old memories, remember that you did not pass through everything merely to become a colder version of yourself. You passed through it to become deeper, wiser, and freer. What once wounded you is not a prophecy concerning your future. Those experiences are chapters that taught you the value of peace, sincerity, and safe relationships. You do not need to feel grateful for the pain itself, but you can be grateful for the strength that grew as you overcame it. You do not need to call wrongdoing good, but you can recognize that it failed to destroy the compassion within you. Continue protecting this transformation, my beloved. Do not return to the old cycle because someone attempts to provoke the version of you that you have already left behind. Do not allow one moment of anger to destroy the peace you have built. When you need to speak, speak clearly without using words to destroy. When you need to leave, walk away without carrying curses with you. When you need to forgive, forgive so that you may be free, while still preserving necessary boundaries. I have seen something rare within you, the ability to receive pain, confront it, and refuse to allow it to reproduce. You have disconnected the cycle. Now you are not only healing yourself by choosing to live differently, you are creating a new legacy for those who will follow you. Chosen one, look back over the recent months, because the way you remained standing amid upheaval is clear evidence that profound growth has taken place within you. Certain events occurred completely contrary to what you expected, leaving you unable to find a reasonable explanation. Perhaps someone who smiled before you quietly spoke untrue things behind your back. Perhaps you entered a season when many things became chaotic at once. Carefully prepared plans suddenly failed, doors that appeared open unexpectedly closed, and relationships you believed would endure changed without warning. These things made you sad and disappointed, and at times caused you to wonder what you had done wrong. Yet amid all these movements, something important happened that you may not have fully recognized. You faced them very differently from the way you once would have. In the past, one rejection could cause you to question your entire worth. One person leaving could make you believe you were unworthy of love. One unsuccessful plan could persuade you that every road ahead had been blocked. You remained in disappointment for long periods, analyzed every word, remembered every detail, and blamed yourself for things that were not entirely your responsibility. But now this has changed. You still feel pain, because maturity does not mean becoming numb, but you no longer allow pain to consume your entire identity. You can feel sadness without becoming hopeless, experience disappointment without destroying your faith, and lose something important while still remembering that your future has not ended. I saw how you learned to pause before reacting. I saw you stop answering every wound through anger and stop explaining yourself to people who had already decided to misunderstand you. You learned that not every argument must be won, not every accusation needs an answer, and not every person who leaves must be pursued. At times your silence was not weakness, but evidence that you had become wise enough not to waste your peace on conversations incapable of producing understanding. Sometimes you chose to leave a room, not because you had lost, but because you recognized that your dignity was more valuable than the need to prove that you were right. You no longer remain buried in brokenness for as long as you once did, nor do you give a temporary event the authority to define who you are. You have learned to adapt when plans change, learn when a decision does not produce the expected result, and grow through what once wounded you. Instead of continually asking why something happened to you, you began asking what you could learn from it. Instead of pursuing people who did not appreciate you, you learned to return and care for your inner peace. Instead of interpreting a closed door as condemnation, you began understanding that it may simply be redirection. This transformation did not occur in one night. It formed through countless times when you reminded yourself to breathe deeply, countless days when you continued living with integrity, and countless moments when you decided not to let the past control your present response. My beloved, that is not coincidence. It is evidence that trials could not destroy you as they once threatened to do. You have become tender without being fragile, compassionate without being easily exploited, forgiving without returning to places that repeatedly wound you. I taught you that kindness does not mean tolerating disrespect. Compassion does not require you to remove every boundary. You can desire goodness for someone and still refuse them access to a place where they once created chaos. You can release resentment without denying what occurred. This is the sign of someone being healed through wisdom, rather than merely attempting to forget through avoidance. Heaven witnessed the entire transformation within you. I did not see only what happened, but also watched how you faced every event. Others may have seen you continuing to work, completing your responsibilities, and smiling when necessary, but I saw the private battle taking place inside you. I know there were moments when you strongly desired to return to your old reactions, speak bitterly, close your heart completely, or make the person who wounded you experience similar pain. Yet in the place where no one was watching, you chose another direction. You did not allow a wound to become your reason for creating another wound. You did not let betrayal teach you to betray. You did not permit another person's coldness to transform your heart into a place without love. I saw not only your outward circumstances, but also the hidden inward response no one else could acknowledge. That response changed everything. When you chose peace over chaos, you broke an old pattern. When you refused to speak badly about someone who had spoken badly about you, you proved that their behavior had no authority to determine your character. When you did not return to a relationship merely because you felt lonely, you demonstrated that you had learned to value yourself. When you continued doing what was right, even though no one was watching, you placed another stone into the foundation of your future. These hidden choices may not produce immediate applause, but they shape the person you will become for many years ahead. True strength is not always displayed in public moments. When many people are watching and prepared to applaud, it is often revealed through private decisions. It is shown when you sit alone and choose not to send a message written in anger. It is shown when you turn off the screen, stop following the life of someone who left, and decide to return to caring for yourself. It is shown when you reject an attractive opportunity because you know it would require you to sacrifice your principles. It is also shown when you keep your promise, even though no one could know whether you broke it. There is no applause during those moments. No one records the victory, and sometimes no one recognizes what you have just overcome. Yet those seemingly invisible choices carry the greatest weight, because they reveal who you truly are when every performance has been removed. There was a moment when you were wounded very deeply, although time may have caused the memory to fade. It was not merely a passing discomfort, but a wound that made you reconsider the way you trusted, loved, and perceived yourself. Perhaps it came from someone you once protected, someone to whom you offered many opportunities, or someone who knew your weaknesses and still chose to touch the place that hurt the most. In that moment, you stood before two roads. One road invited you to become hardened, close every door, and decide never again to let anyone come near. The other road was more difficult, to continue living according to your good nature without remaining naive, to continue loving while establishing boundaries, and to continue believing in goodness without denying the lessons you had received. You chose consistency. This does not mean you were never angry, never cried, or never wanted to give up. It means that after everything, you did not allow another person's actions to turn you into a stranger to yourself. You continued choosing honesty even after being deceived. You preserved compassion even when your kindness was undervalued. You continued believing that healthy love existed even after experiencing relationships that exhausted you. That choice may have cost you something. Some interpreted your silence as weakness. Some took advantage of your unwillingness to fight. Some assumed you would accept everything forever, merely because you knew how to forgive. But step by step, you learned to combine gentleness with clarity. You did not need to become cruel in order to become safe. You only needed to become discerning. I know no one applauded when you made these decisions. No one knew how fiercely you struggled with yourself, not to return to what was familiar. No one saw the nights when you had to remind yourself that temporary loneliness was still better than a relationship that took away your peace. No one recorded the times when you had an opportunity to retaliate and chose to stop. Yet none of these choices was forgotten. Every time you guarded yourself from bitterness, you became freer. Every time you chose integrity. When dishonesty appeared easier, the strength within you grew deeper. Every time you released the need for others to understand you completely, you moved closer to a peace that no longer depends upon the opinions of the world.